Hey everybody, and welcome to the 2023 into 2024 edition of my top 100 board games of all time. Now this year I'm going to do something a bit different by talking through the entirety of the 100 games in a single video. So naturally I'm going to be making very brief comments about these games, but hopefully if something catches your attention, you can do some homework and see if that game is right for you. So without wasting too much more time, I just want to give a quick shout out to the show sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer. And if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's get started on my top 100 board games of all time. So at number 100, we have Sub-Astral. Now this is a little filler set collection game with quite a cool mechanism where you are playing cards from your hand into this common row. Anything to the left can be added into your hand for future use, but anything to the right can be added into your scoring pile. Potential to score huge points here, and that conundrum between those two mechanisms is quite a difficult thing to manage. At number 99, I have Stella, which is almost a two-player version of Sub-Astral. This one, again, you're drafting cards. You're playing one of those cards into your telescope and the other one into your notebook, and the two basically multiply with each other. That is Stella. At number 98, I have the classic Coloretto. Coloretto, one of the coolest little push your luck set collection game where you're trying to collect these sets of lizards or these chameleons, but anything above your third set will count as negative points. Lots of messing up your opponent, good player interaction here, a bona fide classic. That is Coloretto. At number 97, I have Parade. Now this is a golf style game where you're pretty much trying to avoid taking cards, but if you must take cards, you want to have the most of a set because they're only going to be worth 1 point each rather than the face value of them. Beautiful looking game, criminally underrated. That is Parade. At number 96, I have an older one here with Quo Vadis, recently reprinted as Zoo Vadis, a cool negotiation style game as you are chatting with the other players, trying to convince them to give them your support, or them your support, or you their support, to climb through the ranks here of the Senate and reach the top here, collecting points as you go. If you do not reach the end, then you're not eligible for winning. Great potential to strike up deals, which is what you want from a negotiation game. At number 95, I have another Knizia kind of hidden gem here. This is the Tower of Babel. Now this one is a kind of conflicting game as you are trying to score majorities by building these different wonders, but you can either accept or reject the offers by the other players. If you reject them, they're going to score points for each card that they've offered you. So a little conundrum there to overcome. That is the Tower of Babel. At number 94, I have the first Stefan Feld game on the list. This is Jorvik. So I love the bidding mechanism in Jorvik as you have this queuing system behind the cards you want to collect. The longer the queue, the people in the front of the queue must pay more coins. So it really is this kind of push your luck mechanism where hopefully you can get a good deal or be prepared to pay a hefty price for those best cards. At number 93, I have Trambarn. This one, kind of a cult favourite when it comes to the two-player range of games. Nice multi-use card system as you're trying to build runs of cards almost in a Lost Cities style fashion, and again score them multiplying on these different kind of station cards that you can collect, but the tempo is really dictated by the players. This one deserves a reprint, and I'm pretty confident one day it is going to happen. At number 92, I have Acropolis. So a lovely entry level tile placement game with a 3D aspect to it as you're stacking these tiles on top of each other, scoring bigger multipliers, scoring all based on the different colours. Residential buildings want to chain them together, yellow wants to be isolated, the orange ones want to be on the perimeter of the board, and so on. A little touch of King Domino, a little touch of Cascadia, and even a touch of Miyabi for the amazing Acropolis. At number 91, I have the first kind of party game on the list with Telestrations. So Telestrations, probably the funniest game I've ever played. It's basically a game of Chinese whispers or telephone, where you are writing something on these dry erase boards. The next person will draw what you've written, the next person will write what you've drawn, and so on until it's been so confused amongst the players that it breaks out into absolute hilarity. Nobody cares about the scoring here. It's more of an activity than the game, to be honest, but it's guaranteed a good time. At number 90, I have Longshot, the dice game, a hilarious little roll and write racing game that accommodates quite a few players actually exceedingly well. Love this one. That is Longshot, the dice game. At number 89, we have a new entry with Forest Shuffle, another set collection game that came out this year. It's got huge potential to scoring upon scoring, lots of compounding benefits there, and it's all about trying to play those cards as optimally as you can, being careful not to give cards away to your opponents in the process. At number 88, I have District Noir, which is almost like a micro game, really. Great little two-player game, as you are picking up these cards from a row, but you can only pick up the last 5. And there's good cards, there's bad cards there, and it's all about trying to lure your opponent into traps to taking the worst deal out of the two of you. At number 87, I have Framework. Framework recently replaced Nova Luna for me. This one is an absolutely lovely little puzzly style game as you're chaining all these different tiles together, trying to score as many things as you can. Very satisfying turns as you pull off those big moves. At number 86, I have Wits and Wagers. So this is like a trivia game with a twist, because you don't actually need to be good at trivia to play this one, because you can bet on other people knowing the answers. At number 85, I have The Rich and the Good. Another new entry here. Is an older game, a little economic game, as you are communally manipulating this little stock market to your benefit, buying low, selling high, but being sure to stash the money away, because if you haven't donated enough money, you're going to be automatically eliminated from scoring. So I love that additional mechanism there. At number 84, I have Dragon Keepers. Dragon Keepers came from nowhere for me this year. A lovely little kind of card shedding game. Trying to score points by playing matching cards to this ever-changing book. Again, good player interaction here. Tons of ways to score points, and just a really enjoyable little game. At number 83, I have Ohanami, one of the most underrated little card games that you'll ever find. You're building columns of cards, only being able to play cards higher than the highest number you've played or lowest than the lowest number you've played, and not being able to fill in those gaps becomes even more, well, the pressure really ramps up as the game progresses. At number 82, I have Mirmies. Mirmies, a game about running an ant colony. It's a worker placement game. You are trying to improve your colony. You're trying to send ants out onto the surface to kill insects and score these objectives as well. A really classic little game here that's getting a reprint soon. That is Mirmies. At number 81, I have Underwater Cities, engine building galore in this pretty involved game as you are building your little underwater complex here. Really cool resource management, and as I said, stringing those cards together, synergizing them as much as possible is pretty much as good as an example that engine building can be. At number 80, I have a two-player game with Air, Land and Sea. A little hand management game as you're playing these cards to these different fields of war, trying to combo them together as best as you can. And I love the scoring mechanism here, as if you don't think you're going to win, you can back out the fight. The earlier you back out, the less points or the fewer points you reward to your opponent. At number 79, I have Awkward Guests, one of the best deduction games out there. It's kind of Cluedo on steroids. Very cinematic stories unravel here, and very satisfying experience when you crack the case. That is Awkward Guests. At number 78, I have Pergamon. Now, Pergamon, a bit of a hidden gem of a medium lightweight euro, or even a lightweight euro, as you are trying to collect these different sets of these artifacts, string them together because they only fit in certain ways. But I love the way that you acquire money here through this push your luck system, where the earlier you go, you get first dibs in what's in this random bag, but you'll get fewer coins. If you go later, you might get more money, but the money could run out by the time it gets to you. Really interesting and unique game there. At number 77, I have Rapido, one of my favourite push your luck style games. Just roll your dice trying to climb this staircase by rolling doubles or reserving your place on this independent stair track or staircase here, and if you remain on that staircase by the time it gets back to you, as if nobody's rolled higher than you, then you get to move up additional spaces as well. I've never had a bad game of Rapido. At number 76, I have Scout, an ever popular little kind of little ladder climbing game, a little kind of card shedding game, as you have a fixed set of cards in your hand that you cannot reshuffle, and you have to keep on trumping your opponent by playing bigger and bigger sets. Really interesting game, and I think a downright evergreen. That is Scout. At number 75, I have High Society, one of my favourite auction style games, as you are bidding for these different points cards with the money cards you have in your hand, and you're even bidding not to take these negative cards. But the twist on this one, if you've spent the most money by the game's end, then you will automatically be disqualified from winning. At number 74, I have Power Grid by Freedom and Freeze. This one, kind of an economic Euro resource management, as you are trying to build up this network of power stations, and some good supply and demand mechanisms going on here. I'm constantly getting better efficiency, and yeah, I really enjoy this game. That is Power Grid. At number 73, I have World Exchanges. So quite a unique little game here, kind of a 20-minute economic game, as you are plotting out this little cash flow chart, trying to reach these symbols as you go, which will be multiplied by the buildings that you accumulate throughout the game. Really cool little tactical decisions here, and even some long-term planning. That is World Exchanges. At number 72, I have Arcadia. So this is kind of one of Rudiger Dawn's lesser known games. I really like the way that you are managing your polyominoes here, as well as trying to cash in these coins you're collecting at the right time, depending on the display here on this ever-changing market. Complete hidden gem. This one's definitely faded into obscurity, but I definitely think this one deserves to see the light of day because it's a very high-quality game. At number 71, I have Luna, which I think is one of Stefan Feld's most unusual games, as you are trying to optimally use these disciples to gain entry to this temple and start generating points based on this area control mechanism, where you can kick people off of spots. At number 70, I have Kraftwagen by Matthias Kramer. This one is a little economic Euro, where you are building these automobiles and trying to sell them at to the right customer at the best price. Lots of undercutting and things in this game, so some really good player interaction in Kraftwagen. At number 69, I have one of the Mask trilogy by Wolfgang Kramer with Mexica. So Mexica is actually the only game from that trilogy on this list, because it's my favourite, of course. This is like an abstract area control game, as you are carving out this board here by placing these little river tiles, erecting these temples and trying to dominate the regions. But I love the fact you have to move your little meeple around into the right zones in order to build those temples in the first place. Quite a nasty little game, but fun nonetheless. At number 68, I have Las Vegas Royale. Outrageously fun little dice rolling game, as you are rolling a big cluster of dice and choosing one of the pip values and allocating them to one of the 6 casinos. Some of the casinos have these really engaging and fun little mini games to get more money. A really great game to play with, say, 4 or 5 players. That is Las Vegas Royale. At number 67, I have Spirium. Spirium is a kind of a worker placement game where you are placing your workers between these cards, but the more you build up around these cards, as in the other players go there, then the more expensive it's going to be. So it has this kind of chicken mechanism where do you want to wait till the end and hopefully people move out of your way, or do you want to get in there early, get the card you want, and possibly have to pay more? At number 66, I have Municipium. Municipium, kind of a very subtle area control style game, as you are trying to position your kind of tokens around, or your pawns, on different locations at the right time to collect these meeples, and you're racing to get different sets of these meeples, but all of these different locations have unique powers on them which can completely change the board state. One that requires more than one player to really understand the depth and nuances here, but I really do enjoy this very cool little area control game. At number 65, I have the heaviest of this bunch with Darwin's Journey. So Darwin's Journey, a Simone Luciani and Nestor Mangoni design. This one, it's a worker placement game where you are kind of tailor making your workers and building up the strength of what you want them to do. So I love that each worker has their own strengths and weaknesses. You are collecting these different kind of like fossils and things, tons of different ways to score points, climbing tracks, really nice production, and just a really well put together kind of medium heavyweight Euro. At number 64, I have the rather large Marrakechia, another Stefan Feld game. And this is one of those games that's a ton of mini games held together through this really cool Keshi system, where you're throwing these Keshis into a dice tower or a cube tower, and then allocating them onto your player board to make those independent actions stronger. Tons of paths to victory here, tons of upgrades and things, and it's just a hell of a lot of fun to play. So that is Marrakech. At number 63, I have Sulla, which is a kind of a forgotten gem, really, from the Istari series. This one, you are essentially trying to overcome these different threats. You're trying to collect these tokens based on this commodity speculation system. And I love this multi-use card system where you can either use these characters for their powers or use them to acquire these rather powerful buildings, but you cannot do both. So that is Sulla. At number 62, I have St. Petersburg. So a bit like Gold Dust, this game, really cool little tableau builder as you're collecting these cards to generate new money and generate new points, as well as climbing this little track here to score you more points. Very simple system, but the timing is everything in this very clever game. At number 61, I have Rise. So Rise is a game all about climbing tracks, and you do that through this really cool card selection system where the further or the better card you choose, or the further card along the track you choose, you'll get some additional bonuses. And as I said, you'll climb one track, which might let you climb another track, which might let you climb another track, and so on. So it's all about creating these huge, satisfying combos. And sometimes you'll pull off bigger moves than you even anticipated because of the synergies between those tracks. Hell of a lot of fun. That is Rise at number 61. At number 60, I have another Knizia classic with Samurai. So Samurai, kind of an area control style game as you're placing these tokens out on this board here, trying to surround these different objects. The scoring system here is quite weird, but quite engaging, because you want to be having 2 out of the 3 of those majorities of sets. If you can, and if not, it will fall into a different category. So it's quite a fine balancing object, and I like the way you have to very carefully consider where you're placing each of your tokens to not waste anything. At number 59, I have Assyria. Assyria, another one from the Istari line of games. This one, I like how temporary everything is, as you are using these cards to place these little huts on the board there, but you can only ever spawn off from where you have existing huts, but each round you have to pay those resources to keep them on the board, so nothing is permanent here. You can build these temples to give you ticking points, to generate points, and tons of different ways to, again, try and obtain the victory. So that is Assyria. At number 58, I have one of my most played games of all time. This is Hanamikoji, a very subtle little card game, a little tug-of-war style game, as you are using this I split you choose mechanism to gain control over these geisha girls. At number 57, I have Anno 1800, so quite a daunting and intimidating game, as you're building up these kind of tech trees to get this more sophisticated technology to try and please these kind of customer orders. But the more you create here, the more cards you have to complete, so it really is this balancing act between, satisfying the people as well as increasing your option to produce more things. At number 56, I have another 2-player only game with Seven Wonders Duel. This is a drafting game, as you are communally drafting from this pyramid of cards, being careful about what you're leaving to your opponent. You're balancing resources with victory points, with military skills and your science. Definitely a game where you need to spin a lot of plates. At number 55, I have one of the original games from my collection with For Sale, a very simple little auction style game. As for the first half of the game, you're spending your coins to get property, and in the second half of the game, you're using your property to gain these large cash checks through the simultaneous bidding system. Genius design, evergreen game that is For Sale. At number 54, I have Citrus. Now this is like an abstract tile placement style game that uses this kind of cross-hatching system where you're drafting these tiles, placing them on the board, trying to create these chains, and also control these thinkers to gain victory points. At number 53, I have Peloponnese. This is like a disaster mitigation style game that does use a bidding mechanism to acquire these buildings, which will generate you more resources. And then essentially you are trying to overcome these threats that will hit you every so often in the game by reducing your resources, reducing your population, and so on. A hell of a lot of fun. That is Peloponnese. At number 52, I have Firenze. Now this is a tower building style game where if you do not top up the towers you're building each round, then they're going to partially crumble away. It has this kind of incentive building system where you're taking cards from this row. However, some of the cards are good, some of the cards are rather bad. And in order to skip the bad ones, you have to place more roofs to skip past those cards, which make those cards more inviting to the following players. At number 51, I have Biblios, another classic filler game here. Good degree of commodity speculation, as these cards you're collecting, you're not quite sure of the value of them, because throughout the game, the value of them is going to be manipulated by the players based on these dice. At number 50, I have Rumble Nation, a little dice rolling area control game, as you are rolling 3 dice. The pair of them is going to show which region you can deploy in, and the remaining one is going to show how many cubes you put into that region. Once all your cubes are deployed, then they're going to resolve each region one by one. However, each region you win will split off cubes to the adjacent regions, therefore bolstering your influence in those regions. At number 49, I have Hamburg, which was formerly known as Bruges. This is a multi-use card game by Stefan Feld. I love the way you have to manage that hand of cards in order to get the most from them, to build buildings, to increase your engine, to climb this track, to do a ton of different things. The engine building here is immensely satisfying, and you'll never really play the same game twice because there are so many cards. At number 48, I have Istanbul. Istanbul, lovely kind of entry-level Euro, as you are moving around this markets with your pawn and leaving your merchants on these different locations. However, you only have a limited supply of these helpers, meaning that you have to backtrack on yourself and create these optimal routes. And loads of different ways to score points, and I love the kind of racing aspect here, as you want to be the first to collect a certain number of rubies. At number 47, I have Kalimala. So Kalimala is a kind of an area control style game where you know the order far in advance about which different regions are going to be scored at certain times. And the action selection system here is genius, as you are placing your kind of work between two actions and taking both of those actions. But if somebody goes to the action after you, then you also get to take that action again. I really love that, so it creates a whole new dimension of player interaction. At number 46, I have the massive Wallenstein. This is like a war game Euro hybrid, as you are, of course, trying to fight for dominance. I won't put the box over here. But I love the combat system here, as you use this cube tower to resolve combat. And it has this great programming mechanism where you need to determine what all your units are going to do before everything is resolved. And it creates some very cinematic moments. And it's, just a brilliantly designed game. At number 45, I have Ys. Now, Ys is a kind of a commodity speculation and area control game, as you are deploying these little cylinders out on this board here. You're trying to collect these gems, which will score you points based on this kind of sliding market, as well as collecting ongoing powers and so on. So I love this idea that you can deploy some of your cylinders face up so people know, and some of them face down, which can be used as a bluffing tool. At number 44, I have Vikings. So Vikings is a kind of a drafting and tile placement game, as you are building up this little board of these little peninsulas, these little islands, and then each meeple, each Viking colour, has certain strengths, and some will generate you points, some of them will generate you money, some of them will let you repel off these invading ships, and so on. Next up, at number 43, I have Tinner's Trail by Martin Wallace. Now, this is another kind of economic game, as you are trying to mine all these different, tin and iron, I think, from these different mines, and try to sell them when those resources are worth the most money. But I love the scoring system here, as the earlier in the game you can trade your money in for more points, or you can try and keep hold of your money for future rounds but not get as many points in return for that money later. Also love the time track system here, where each action you take will take a certain amount of time, and as long as you're behind on that order, you can keep on taking turns. At number 42, I have Coimbra. Coimbra, lovely looking Euro game, as you are building up this engine of cards. You're travelling around this map. You are basically trying to visit these different locations, get these end game scoring things. But I love this idea that when you draft these dice from this communal draft pool, depending on the colour, you get some follow-up bonuses depending on what you've done on these separate tracks. So you can get more money, you can get more kind of military points, you can get more movement, or even more victory points. So yeah, I love that kind of that dual drafting system that Coimbra offers. At number 41, I have another dice drafting game, and a much heavier one. This is Tris Magistus. It's a part of the T series, but probably one of the lesser popular ones, because it is quite an involved game where you're considering 3 different things when you are drafting these dice. The colour, the symbol, and also the number of dice in that pool to show the potency of these. And other than that, it's a kind of contract fulfillment style game where you have to very meticulously plan ahead to get all the right ingredients in all of the right places. At number 40, I have Pulsar 2849. So this is another dice drafter where you are somewhat punished for keep on taking the higher valued dice. I love the ways you can tackle this game, because you can kind of fly around the little solar system here, visiting these different planets. You can create these gyrodenes, which will give you a steady income of points. You can get these really cool game-breaking technologies. And you don't actually get that many turns in this game, so it always feels like you're put under a lot of pressure to get things done. That is Pulsar 2849. At number 39, I have Trois, an immensely replayable game as you are using these dice in order to trigger these different action cards, which are hugely variable. And I love the way that you can steal dice off other players without their permission, but you have to pay them in order to do so. You're also fighting off these communal threats to get influence. At number 38, I have Aquasphere. This is a programming Steffenfeld game. As you are moving around this big rondel, you're fighting off these little octopods, collecting new technologies, fighting for area control. And I love the way you have to pre-plan all of your movements to play as optimally as you can. At number 37, I have Mandala, a two-player only game that feels ancient in its approach. It's so clean and intuitive to play as you're using these cards for not only placing to put them up for grabs, but you're using these cards to bid for those cards in the first place. And the order in which you collect these cards is important because the first set you collect are only worth 1 point each, but the sixth card you collect or the fifth card you collect are worth 5 or 6 points each respectively. So I love the way that works, and things can ramp up in their value. At number 36, I have another Steffenfeld game with Bonfire. Now, I'm terrible at this game where you are setting your own objectives by visiting these islands, collecting these little objective tiles and trying to complete those objectives as quickly as you can. It's quite an intricate game, maybe not the most intuitive at times, but I think that learning curve really does pay off if you like strategic gaming. At number 35, I have Terra Mystica, in a highly revered Euro game here, as you are basically trying to terraform the land to your particular race's needs. And you are basically putting buildings down from your player board here, unlocking more income, trying to string these little networks together and exploit your faction's power as much as possible. At number 34, I have Maracaibo, which is like my one-stop shop fix for all things Alexander Pfister. This one, you are basically moving around this rondel, visiting these different locations, completing objectives, fighting pirates through this multiple-use card system. And I love this kind of investment system as you gain influence with the different factions, which can score you endgame multipliers. And a cool little campaign twist as well, just to keep each game feeling a little bit fresh. At number 33, I have Condottiere, an older little card hand management game with this kind of conflict as you're competing over different regions in Italy. I love the fact that you can use these cards to bluff, and this whole idea of how you need to pace yourself to really get the most from these, because if you waste them all in a battle, then you're not going to have much going forward. So yeah, you really do need to learn how to compete when you need to, and when to sit out of fights that you do not need to get involved in. At number 32, I have Goa, another Rudiger Dawn game here. This one, you are essentially bidding on these different tiles, but you are programming which tiles come out up for auction. And that's done communally with the other players. So you're kind of planning out a route together. And then what you're doing is you're collecting resources, and you're going on expeditions, you're increasing your engine through your player board. And it's just a really, classic feeling old school Euro. At number 31, I have the immensely popular Brass Birmingham, another economic kind of route building style game, as you are using a hand of cards to create kind of these industries. You're planning routes out, building networks. And I love this kind of shared infrastructure where you can actually use the resources of other players, but using too many of them will actually start generating them victory points. At number 30, I have Chin. So Chin, new to the list. This is like almost like a domino style game, as you're trying to fill up this board by placing certain colours next to each other and then putting these pagodas down. And it's a race to get these pagodas down, but you can use really cool little network building to connect to these cities to let you put even more pagodas down, and even force people to pick pagodas back up off the board. Very simple and straightforward to play. At number 29, I have Caesar's Empire. Now this is another network building style game or route building game, as you are spawning out from Rome, visiting these different locations, collecting tokens to get you set collection points, but then you're tracing a route back to Rome, and for every person you pass through, they are going to get a victory point. So player interaction is embedded into the very fundamental essence of this game. At number 28, I have the Castles of Burgundy. Now I'd have a very old edition here, but this one, you are essentially building up this little map here of all these buildings, which will score you points different ways. There's cool combos, good mitigation tools, and I just love how nice and pleasant this game feels, and definitely one of Stefan Feld's most popular games. At number 27, I have War Chest, which is an abstract strategy game as you're maneuvering these military units around the board, trying to claim these different regions before your opponent does. But I love how simple the game system is, but the minor rules changes for each of the military units changes the game completely, and it's all about trying to get the most out of these units to play to their strengths. At number 26, I have Capital Lux 2 Generations. This is almost like a blackjack variant, as you are playing these cards in front of you as well as to this city board. But whenever you play them in the city, you get a unique ability that you have to take. It really is a delicate balancing act. Again, another game with loads of replayability because there are so many variations and combos which you can choose to play with. At number 25, I have Newton. So Newton, kind of a classic feeling Euro, as you're traveling around the map here, visiting these different locations to get the knowledge to fill up your bookcase. I love the scoring system here, where instead of just getting points as you go, you are starting to generate points, kind of in a snowballing effect, the more you fill up the bookcase. The card play is great, as you keep getting compounding benefits the more you play the same type of card. At number 24, I have the classic Puerto Rico. This one is kind of a role selection style game, and I love the fact that when you choose a role, every other player gets to take that same ability, but a slightly kind of worse mode of it. So, if you choose the method, you get the stronger version. Everybody else gets a slightly weaker version. You're building up a plantation, getting resources, sending those resources off for victory points. But it's all about trying to piggyback off the other players. At number 23, I have another Stefan Feld game with Bora Bora. Now this is a dice drafting game with a unique twist where the lower values are generally just as good as the higher values, because although the higher values will give you stronger versions of abilities, as soon as someone's gone to a location with a certain pip value, you can only ever play lower versions. So the higher ones are great and strong, but you'll get locked out of different regions pretty damn quickly. At number 22, I have one of the original worker placement games with Kalis. So a pretty brutal worker placement and resource management game, as you are collecting resources to build new buildings on the board that you can visit. But you can actually go to this provost spot and block people from taking those actions as you kind of slide the provost down, and anything past the provost is not available to be had. So it is quite a spicy game, but it's very engaging, and I love the way that it plays. That is Kalis. At number 21, another Stefan Feld game with In the Year of the Dragon. Now, considered the most brutal of the Stefan Feld designs, this one really is a game of attrition, as you are trying to overcome all of these disasters that come out in a planned route, and you've got to have the right staff in your little pagodas here at the right time to overcome those threats. And squeezing points out of this game is like getting blood out of a stone, but it's so satisfying when you weather that storm. And at number 20, I have Navigador. The Navigador by Mac Gertz is a rondel style game, as you're taking actions to explore this map here, visiting these different locations, using the supply and demand market to get money. And I love what Mac Gertz does in his games, where you can kind of tailor make the scoring that you're going for. At number 19, I have Amerigo, another Staffelfeld game. This one uses a cube tower to take your actions. You are placing polyominoes on these islands, you're traveling around, you're fighting off pirates, you're climbing tracks. This one is probably one of the most kind of addictive style games. You know, as soon as I play this one, I just want to play it more and more because it is just pure fun in a box. At number 18, I have Tzolk'in, the Mayan calendar, which was actually one of the first Euro games I ever acquired. This one is still so unique as it's a worker placement game, but you're placing them on these gears, and the longer you leave them on the gears, you kind of charge up the power of your actions. But each round you have to take something off the gears or put something on, so you do have to make those decisions. At number 17, I have Grand Austria Hotel. Now this one is a really thematic dice drafter, as you are taking actions by drafting dice. Now the more dice there are in that pool of actions, the stronger that action is, but of course there's going to be more chance to go there later. You're basically trying to appease your little patrons, send them off to their hotel rooms happy, exploit the powers of your staff and get loads of cool combos and domino effect rewards. Immensely satisfying game. That is Grand Austria Hotel. At number 16, I have Teletum. Now, Teletum, actually the newer of the T series of games, and it kind of goes back to a more simple school of design. Another dice drafter where if you take an action, you are going to get the reverse side of that pip value on the dice as resources. So it does have that conundrum. Do you want loads of resources and a weak action, or a weak action and tons of resources? You're traveling around the board, trying to fulfill contracts, fill up your little player boards full of people. Real pure kind of throwback style Euro game. At number 15, I have Brussels 1893. This is like an area control worker placement hybrid where every placement is so important because it contributes to different things. So you are trying to collect artwork and sell them when it's most profitable. You're trying to build buildings. You're trying to go up tracks to increase the multipliers of your scoring, compete for majorities in these columns, as well as taking the actions themselves. So a multi-dimensional game that's remarkably streamlined considering how much is going on. At number 14, I have Hansa Teutonica. This is like a kind of an abstract Euro hybrid, as you're building up networks on this board here, increasing your engine by taking stuff off your player board to make you more efficient at taking actions. Puts you under a lot of pressure because the time goes by quickly here, and if you do not get your points secured, you can certainly be caught off guard. Some quite spicy player interaction, but it's all part and parcel in the game, and it's not nasty interaction. It's kind of just in your face style interaction. At number 13, I have the Oracle of Delphi. This one is a racing style game, as you are using dice to take actions, to move around the board, to collect items, deposit it somewhere else, fight these monsters. You're charging up these powers to get kind of game-breaking abilities. Really cool player interaction as you're racing to get all these objectives done and get back to base before anybody else does. That's the Oracle of Delphi. At number 12, I have Concordia, which is elegance personified when it comes to board gaming. This one is kind of a hand management game as you're using this hand of cards to maneuver around the board, to set up these outposts, to collect resources. The interaction is cool here because when you gather resources, you can end up helping and filling up the coffers of your opponents. The system where you're playing cards and knowing when to pull that trigger to pick up all those cards back into your hand is something I really enjoy, and it's all about efficiency here, where you do not want to waste any movement at all. That is Concordia. At number 11, I have Praga Capirredny, which I think is just as good as a well-rounded Euro as you can imagine. Has everything you want here when it comes to Euro gaming, and surprisingly simple to dive back into after absence of playing it. So You're using this really cool action crane to take your actions, and the longer you neglect an action, the more powerful kind of follow-up ability that you get. You're climbing tons of tracks, you're increasing your yield of resources, increasing your engine, a little bit of area control going on, and it's just an immensely satisfying game to play with tons of combos. At number 10, I have Barrage, which is a very fierce kind of economic game as you are trying to harness the power of water through trapping it in your dams as it flows downstream. More interaction here, as you can actually force people to use your conduits to extract the water, which gives you a benefit. The resource management in this game is great because you do not actually spend your resources, you just tie them up for a finite amount of time. The turn angst is fantastic, which is what you want with a worker placement game. And again, I just love how fundamental the kind of network and interaction is in this game. It is a true kind of masterpiece when it comes to innovative Euro design. At number 9, I have Ultimate Railroads, which is the compiled version of Russian railroads, Asian railroads, American railroads, which is another worker placement game where you are constantly building up your engine to generate victory points. So it has this huge kind of snowballing effect as you are pushing your little kind of pieces along these train tracks, getting bonuses as you go, and again, generating you victory points. Much like Barrage, the turn angst here is really strong, and I just like I like how clean this game is actually in terms of how much depth there is here, and it's just a very satisfying game that can be quite difficult to catch up with your opponents once they start to overtake you, or vice versa. At number 8, I have Lorenzo Il Magnifico. Now this one, not really talked about so much anymore, but this is one of my favorite games ever. So it's another worker placement game where the strength of your workers is dictated by the roll of 3 different dice, and they correspond to the workers that you're placing, but the strength of those workers are the same for everybody, so you're not quite sure how strong your workers are going to be for the following round, but they're the same as everybody else. Great engine building here, very satisfying. You get little engines you can build as you're harnessing tons of resources, collecting cards to get you set collection bonuses, climbing tracks. Yeah, just a brilliant kind of tableau and engine builder that I absolutely adore. And the expansion is fantastic too for Lorenzo Il Magnifico. At number 7, I have Glenmore 2 Chronicles, which is like my favourite pure tile placement style game, as you are building up your own little moor by placing these tiles, and you're trying to keep this as concise as you can, because you're actually punished for having a big bunch of tiles as compared to your opponents. And all the scoring here goes hand in hand with what your opponents are doing, because you only score the difference between what you and your opponents are doing. Tons of modules here, which are what the Chronicles are all about. So if you want to inject a little bit of spice into each game, then you are free to do that. At number 6, I have Ra. So Ra, an absolute classic auction bidding style game, as you are placing these preset bids on the board in order to claim a bunch of different tiles, which will score you points in different ways. I love how those bids are fixed, because it really does add a whole conundrum in how to utilize those bids for the most value you can get from them. You can even get huge rewards through the worst value tokens, but you do have to be careful not to throw too much time away or to sit back too much, because you can actually waste a whole turn if you drag your heels too much. So it really does mix that bidding, set collection, and time management with a bit of push your luck all together in a great fashion. At number 5, I have Keyflower, which is a hybrid of many mechanisms. You have bidding, you have worker placement, you have a bit of pick up and deliver, you are trying to manage your resources, you've got worker placement, and it manages to use all those mechanisms in the most harmonious way that's remarkably easy to teach. I love this economy of the meeples that you're using, because when you allocate a certain meeple to a location, then it's locked into that colour for all the other players, which you can use to your advantage. You can even use the locations that other players have already acquired, but you have to consider that you are giving them those meeples to use against you later. A genius piece of design, get a hybrid style game that does it to the highest kind of level of quality. At number 4, I have Chinatown, which is my favorite negotiation style game. This one, you're trying to get as much money as you can by stringing these shops of the same type together in these different kind of plots of land. But everything in this game is up for negotiation. You can trade your shop types, you could trade your plots of land, and of course you could trade money. And it really does get out of your way in terms of the rules to really enjoy those large, extravagant, detailed negotiations, which is what I really enjoy. So a hugely interactive game. And if you have kind of more outgoing and confident players, I think you're not going to get a better experience in 45 minutes than Chinatown will offer you. At number 3, I have my highest ranking Knizia game with Babylonia. This one is a kind of a networking game as you're trying to chain your tokens you're deploying together to connect these different locations together, to surround them, to get area control bonuses, get powers as you go as well. Very elegant game, streamlined to the core. Just deploy those tokens on the board and move on. But it really is about blocking your opponents and trying to place as optimally as you can each time you get an action. At number 2, I have my highest ranking Stefan Feld game with Trajan. Now this uses the Mancala system, as you have these coloured tokens in these bowls. You're picking up all the tokens in one of those bowls, dropping them off one at a time, and then ending up in a bowl which will do the action that you are taking that turn. Another kind of mini game style game here, as you're conquesting on the different lands here. You are picking up these little tiles for set collection bonuses, you're trading in cards, you're putting these little forum things on your player board to get additional bonuses, climbing tracks. It really is like mini games galore, but I love how detailed you can be in the planning here. And this is one of those games where the best player will always win, because it's really going to burn your brain to play optimally. Genius design. That is Trajan. And finally, at number 1, as you're probably expecting, El Grande, the grandfather of area control games. This one, I love the kind of contrasting mechanism in how you manage those hand of cards, where you want the best initiative, but also you need a steady income of meeples to deploy onto the board. Constantly spinning plates to make sure that you're in the best position, manipulating that king around the board to make sure that people can't steal your regions or you're getting those extra points. A fantastic game that's aged so well. This is going back to the mid-90s, and it feels as fresh as anything on the market, which is so surprising considering how many area control games have come out since this one. But this is still the best one by quite a large margin, in my opinion, and just the best game I have ever played. So there we have it. That concludes my top 100 board games of all time. Hopefully you've enjoyed this new format, and it's not been too much of an overload of information. If you have enjoyed it, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to my channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.